Welcome everyone, my name is Sarah and I'm here to help you find more connection and fulfillment in your relationships. So in this video, we're going to be exploring part 2 of nonviolent communication. Part 1, check out that video, is about how to communicate nonviolently, how to communicate properly. And this part is going to be on the receiving end, how to listen well, listen empathetically. Have you ever been having a conversation with someone and you feel that they're not really with you, they're not really catching what you're saying, they're not really picking up with what you're putting down? They're probably not being a very good listener at that time. And don't worry, they probably don't mean anything. They don't mean to hurt you or anything like that. They just probably haven't developed the skills needed to be a good listener. So if you guys checked out video number 1, then you heard the story of Margaret and Mark, an average, married couple trying to figure it out. And so we talked about how she properly should have communicated that she was feeling tired that day and basically needed his help with the household chores. Now Mark, on the receiving end, how should he listen? How can he be an empathetic listener? How can he be present there with Margaret so that she feels that her needs are taken care of? All right, so thankfully these days the word empathy isn't an unknown word. We've probably heard that word before, but basically it just means being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Being able to, for a moment, forget yourself, step outside your body, and pretend that you are that person. How would you feel if you were that person? That is empathy. So with Margaret coming home from work and she, again, communicating the proper way, because what happens when you don't communicate properly is you switch something in the other person, where 1, they're hurt, or 2, they're feeling accused, or whatever other reason that they're not able to be fully present with you because now they have their own emotions. You have triggered something in them where they're not able to be present with you. But when you don't do that, when you communicate in a way that is expressing your needs and feelings without those accusations, then they're more likely to be there present with you and really hear what you have to say. And one thing that I really like to say is that you listen beyond their words, you listen to their heart. But if someone is feeling hurt or slighted or put down or in any other type of way, they're not going to be present there to be able to hear your heart, to really put themselves in your shoes. So step number 1 is to be able to communicate properly, so then the receiving person, the person you're speaking to, can listen well. What I'm saying is, if you're not communicating properly, unless the other person is highly evolved and emotionally intelligent, they're not going to be present with you. They're not going to be a good listener. You've already ruined your chances of that. So besides empathy, putting yourselves in their shoes, the example of that would be like Mark listening to her and being like, yeah, man, if I had a long day at the office, or man, I know her coworker is really a drag on her. Yeah, man, I can feel how she would be tired and not wanting to do the dishes right now. He just automatically empathized towards her. The other part of being a good listener is to believe what the other person is telling you. Believe them. Again, hopefully you're with someone who you love, who you believe is an upright person, who you admire. Like, all of these things are preliminary. If we're speaking about romantic relationships, like you chose to marry them, so you're even boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, you're choosing to be with them. So hopefully they've already passed some preliminary things where you can believe them. They're not a liar. They don't want to hurt you, etc. So if all of those boxes are checked, where they're a good and decent person, which hopefully they already are if you're with them, if you're choosing to be with them, then believe what they're saying, believe what they tell you. So if Margaret gets home and she's like, man, I've had a really long day, I'm particularly exhausted today, Mark should believe her. That is part of being a good listener. He shouldn't be like, oh, she's just lying to me because she's lazy, or oh, she didn't have a good day, she's just sitting on her ass all day. Like, no. He's gonna believe her, like, hey, for whatever reason, she's feeling tired right now. I believe her. I'm gonna take her at her word. Very simple stuff, but believe what people are telling you. And then presence. So tip number 3 for being a good listener is to be present with the person. So if he's sitting there watching TV and Margaret comes home and she's like talking about how she's had a long day at work and doesn't want to do the dishes, he should probably flip off the TV or maybe mute it and turn to look at her. Make eye contact with her. Be present with her. That is how he can be a good listener. And the last part of being a good listener is to observe without judgment. He should just sit there and listen to what she's saying without judging her, without, agreeing or disagreeing with what she's saying. Just be there. Observe without judgment. Because I think that a lot of people are like, I'm a good listener, like I'm hearing what you're saying, but what can happen is the other person doesn't feel like you're a good listener. Like, you are listening, but what good is it if the other person doesn't feel that? They're not catching that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you may be listening, hearing every single word they say, but if you are doing something else, if you're not looking at them, if you aren't engaging in the conversation with them, they're not going to feel like you're really listening. So what good is that? So again, you want to be present and engage in a way that not only are you listening, but also they feel like you're listening. And one great tip for how you can do this is to reiterate what they have just said in your own words. So Margaret may come home and say like, man, I've had a really long day at work, this, that, and the other, the boss, this, that, and I see the dishes here in the sink and I'm just not really up to washing them right now. And what Mark could do to be a good listener right then and there is, like I said, turn off the TV or mute it, look at her in the eye, and say like, wow, I'm hearing like you've been really tired lately. And actually, you said something very similar yesterday. Man, is everything going okay at work? Like, I'm hearing that you've been having this, that, and the other, and basically just reiterate what she just said. And that will tell Margaret like, wow, he really is paying attention. And he threw in a bonus saying like, wow. So now Margaret thinks, wow, he was listening to me yesterday too. Like, wow, and he remembers, like, I'm important to him. He remembered that. So Mark is being a great listener when he reiterates what she just said. And then also the beautiful thing about this reiteration is that a lot of times I find this with me and my husband, that he'll say something and I'll reiterate it, what I caught, back to him. And and then he's like, no, what I meant is this. I'm like, oh, wow, I really didn't catch that. I'm glad we clarified. So it's a great opportunity to clarify. Now, in this situation with Mark and Margaret, it's a very simple thing, but the more complex topics that you're discussing, the more this is going to be required, because there's a lot of nuance in some of our discussions, and you want to make sure that you really are catching what the other is saying. And when you reiterate, you give them a chance to see what you understood. And so then they can either elaborate on that, or they can correct you if that's not really what they were saying, and so on. So it's this beautiful, beautiful technique, is to just reiterate what the other person is saying. Along with that reiteration is to identify what they're feeling. So if you're a good listener and someone's telling you something, not only like, okay, here's what not to do. If someone says something like, man, I've had a really long day at work and my boss is being harder on me than she was before, this is what not to do. I'm hearing that you had a really long day at work and your boss is being harder on you than she was before. Like, verbatim, word for word. I think that is just annoying and not very helpful. But, explore one way to tell the person that you are listening and you did catch what they're saying, is to catch how they're feeling. So she said, wow, it sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed with how your boss has been treating you lately. Or it sounds like you're feeling unappreciated with how, and again, you're telling, hey, I'm listening to you. Hey, what you're saying is important to me. But you're also giving them a chance to clarify. Who's like, well, I'm not really feeling unappreciated, but I'm feeling more like blah, 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 blah. Exactly. So, and what is happening there? You are getting to know the person you're speaking to. In this case, between Mark and Margaret, Mark is getting to know his wife. And same thing, like vice versa. They're getting to know each other. And that is what life is all about. Side note, that is what human life is about. It's about connection. It's about knowing each other. And that is why these principles of nonviolent communication are so transformative, not only for your relationships, but to enrich your life. Because that is what we're here to do. We're here to love, we're here to connect, and we're here to know each other better. Rant aside, back to how to listen. So again, it doesn't have to be verbatim, but catch what they're feeling, catch what they're saying, catch what they're getting at. Like I said before, listen to their words, but listen beyond their words to their heart. What are they really feeling? What are they really trying to express? And then the last tip I want to give you on how to be a good listener is to take a moment and separate yourself. Separate yourself and just be present with them. I'll say it. We're all selfish. We're all self-centered. We're all focused on ourselves. But when you're listening to someone, when you're trying to be present with them, take yourself out of the equation for a minute, because we're constantly thinking like, okay, what does this mean for me? You know, like for example, Mark and Margaret. Mark might be like, oh no, am I failing as a husband? Or like, oh no, do I need to work more? So she, like, no, just step that aside for a minute, especially with men, as they are problem solvers and wanting to fix everything, which is a good and admirable quality. Men don't lose that. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is take a break from that for a second. Don't think about what it has to do with you, and just be present. Mark, just be present with your wife, Margaret. Don't worry about what it means for you and your job, what it means for you and your, leisure time. Oh no, she doesn't want me to watch TV. Oh no, I anger her if I watch TV. Like, no, it's not about you for this second. Just focus on her. And so that's what I mean. And this is more important when we are having like the deeper conversations, when the more serious issues come up in our lives. Like, you don't have to listen like this, although it's great if you do, but you don't have to listen with such intensity, when they're telling you, who won on the Red Sox game or whatever, something, not as important. But I'm talking about when we are connecting with the people around us about the deeper, more important matters. That is when you need to turn off the telly. That is when you need to sit and be present. That is when you need to reiterate what they're saying. Hear through their words to their feelings. What are they actually in their heart trying to communicate to you? And that is when you need to take yourself out of the equation. Don't worry about what they're saying means for you just yet. Just listen to what they're saying. Then you can respond. The last thing I want to say about being a good listener is that with this whole nonviolent communication of how to communicate well and how to listen well, this is again assuming that you're with the right person, meaning that you know that they love you and they have good intentions for you. If you're with someone who doesn't, then that's a different conversation. But that's not what we're talking about. These are in like committed relationships that they want the best for you. They're not trying to harm you. The problem is we just accidentally do all the time. And then that being said, you love the person, so you're not trying to hurt them. No one's trying to hurt each other because supposedly you love each other more than anything, right? Supposedly you exchanged vows to love till death do you part, right? So assuming that you don't actually want to hurt them. And then the other assumption we're making is that we actually want to reach a conclusion, right? We actually want to get to a solution. We're not here because you just like to fight. That's not going to work, okay? You need to do if you just like to fight, if you just feed off of conflict, then you need to do some deeper work, maybe see a therapist or whatever to figure out why you enjoy this conflict, okay? That's deeper work. Again, assuming that we want to reach a conclusion. For Mark and Margaret, like Mark doesn't want her to feel tired, doesn't want her to feel overwhelmed. And Margaret, wants the best for Mark and kind of feels bad for asking him, whatever. We're trying to figure it out together. Now, with those two things assumed and, established already, the nonviolent communication is going to take your relationship to the next level. With that said, I will see you guys in the next video.